know that if anybody else is worshiped but you, that always creates disaster in their lives, and you don't want disaster in the lives of your people. And so we give you the worship and the praise. And Lord, I ask you to bless those for whom prayer has been mentioned tonight. We can't do anything about these situations. All we can do is bring these people and these needs into your presence, like children bring broken things to their parents for repair. And we ask you, Lord, if you're not going to repair the health, that you'd prepare our hearts to deal with your will. You never do anything wrong. You never do anything to hurt. And may we trust that even in days such as these. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Isaiah chapter 13. We're going to cover 13 and 14 tonight. And chapters 13 through 23, which we're not going to cover tonight, give us a picture of the worldwide boundaries of Isaiah's prophecy. This is the heart, chapters 13 through 23. And this section of the book, beginning in chapter 13, is called The Burden Upon the Nations. Now, the word burden, normally when you think of, well, I'm burdened about something, it's kind of akin to that. It means weight. And it's the same thing as our word ballast. Now, what do you put ballast on something for? It's like a bag of concrete that you might tie to somebody's feet. Why would you want to do that? You know, you want them to sink. All right? So what we're talking about, the Lord is going to tie some concrete bags around the legs of some nations and just going to suck them out of sight. And they're going to be gone. All right? And so there are two principles for the organization of society in the world. Good evening, guys. From day one until right now. And those two principles are number one, the Babylonian principle. And the Babylonian principle is antagonism toward God. In any culture, in any history, in any civilization, there are those that despise the fact that God exists. Despise the fact that there are principles by which we are expected to obey, you know. And so there's the Babylonian principle. Number two, there's the Jerusalem principle. And the Jerusalem principle is just simply submission towards God. So we have antagonism toward God. That's the Babylonian principle. We have submission towards God, which is the Jerusalem principle. And where do you think we are nationally right now? You think we're in a hybrid? I think we're making a transition. I think we used to be much more Jerusalem principle oriented. And I think we're sliding toward the Babylonian principle. And, oh my goodness, there's that senior. So chapter 13 opens in the year 701 BC. And the primary thrust of these chapters, beginning in 13, going through 23, is to let the world know that God holds every nation accountable for its actions. I don't care who you are. I don't care how many nuclear warheads you have. It does not matter. God holds everyone accountable, and every nation will be determined and judged by their actions as a nation. Now, there's judgment on two levels. There's a personal judgment that we will be judged for our personal acts and behaviors. And then there's national judgment. And nationally, people are judged as to their contribution to their national attitude, okay? Because that's what creates a national attitude, is individuals. And so each nation mentioned in these following chapters did indeed meet these prophesied destinies. We have records of it. We have ancient documents recording these prophecies were fulfilled hundreds of years after they were prophesied. Let me give you this catalog, and then we're going to run into chapter 13. Chapters 13, verse 1, through chapter 14 and chapter 27, Babylon, the gold head of the nations, according to Daniel's prophecy. Chapter 14, verse 28 through 32, deals with Philistia and how God wraps the concrete around their feet and drags them under the water. Chapters 15 and 16 deal with Moab and how he sucked them under the water. Chapter 17, Damascus, which was the capital of Syria. Chapters 18 through 20 deal with Egypt and how God was going to wrap them around and throw them off the dock. Chapters 21, the first 10 verses of chapter 21 deal again with Babylon. Chapter 21, verses 11 and 12 deal with Duma. Duma is Moab, or rather Edom. And then chapter 21, verses 13 through 17 is Arabia. And chapter 22, there's the Valley of the Vision, which is an interesting chapter. We'll get into that later. And then chapter 23, Tyre. So every one of these nations, beginning with Babylon, who was the queen of the nations. This was the golden head of all the nations, which revealed Nebuchadnezzar, his dream, and Daniel's dream a few chapters later, show the same exact thing. The chronological appearance of 5 worldwide universal government agencies or entities. 5. You've got the head of gold, which was Babylon. You have the arms and the breasts of silver, which was Medo-Persia. You've got the belly and the thighs of brass, the stomach of brass, which was Greece. You've got the legs of iron, which was the Roman Empire, split in two in 364 AD. Then you've got the 10 toes that are still yet future to us, which is the 10 government division of the known world at the time of the second coming. And so it was all there. World history in a statue. Compact, really easy to understand, as a matter of fact. And the night that Belshazzar held his party, remember we talked about that last week, I believe it was. Belshazzar, by the way, was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. The night that he had his party, they were surrounded by the Medes and the Persians. And so they just relaxed. When you're surrounded by the Medes and the Persians, and you've got a wall as big as the wall that was around Babylon, here's what you can do. And basically that's what this party did. But that night, while they were in this great big palace that we found the ruins of, by the way, over against the plaster wall, there was a shadow cast by, I think, the menorah that was stolen out of the temple in Jerusalem. They lit this thing for the party. It, I think justly so, is the light that casts this shadow. And out of the sleeve of the night comes a hand. And it writes in a language that nobody can understand because it's pure Hebrew. And the Arabians and the Babylonian scientists and all these guys, they had no clue what it was. Finally, they dragged in 88-year-old Daniel, been there most of his life. And the king says, I'll give you anything you want, man. I'll give you a new Rolex watch. I will give you a $6,000 suit. You will be the cat's meow. And I love Isaiah's answer, or Daniel's answer. Basically, you keep all that stuff, man. I don't want that. I'll tell you what it says, though. It says, you have been numbered and weighed and divided, and tonight, this night, you're done. And the Bible says that the joints of his loins were loosed. And I don't know that I even need to describe what that means, but his visage changed. And that night, the Medes and the Persians rerouted the Euphrates River that flowed underneath the walls through the middle of the city. They rerouted that entire river to go another direction, and they marched underneath the walls and into this palace on dry riverbed and killed him that night. And we are told that this place was so big that it was 3 days before the general population of Babylon knew their king was dead. That's how big it was and how long the slaughter took place. And so that's what we've got here now is God has given every nation that has ever touched the Jew, specifically Judah, Those nations that have come against her have jabbed their finger in her eye, have killed her citizens, have stolen her citizens, has destroyed anything that touches the Jewish nation. They're listed here. Because God is very protective of these people. I don't care how big or little they are. And tonight they're pretty small compared to the nations of the world. But Babylon was a hangman's noose around Judah. And before Judah could be free and at liberty, the hangman had to be killed. All right? So we got to shoot the hangman, get the noose around off of her neck. Well, boom. That brings us to chapter 13. So let's read the description of what happens now to the Babylonian forces and the city and the culture, okay? Verse number 1. By the way, this is, verse 1. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did see. Lift ye up a banner or flag upon the high mountain. Now, this is not symbolism here. The word high is the word bald, with no trees. Are there no trees on this particular mountain? Exalt the voice unto them, and them is the Medes and the Persians. Shake the hand, which means, y'all come on in. It's free, it's open, y'all come on in. And here's, they put this flagman. This is literal stuff here. They put a flagman on top of a mountain that didn't have any trees on it, so you could see. And so it was a signal. So all of the troops that were on their way could see this banner, and I'm not sure exactly what was on the banner, but it was all right, come on, it's time. And so exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. And the nobles, the word nobles is translated tyrants. And so every city that had walls had gates. There's the only way you could get in and out. But I cannot describe for you, in reading about the Babylonian attitude, the arrogance, the pride, the absolute disdain for everything and everybody that was not Babylonian. It was just almost unbelievable. And God hates arrogance, right? He hates pride. And pride is not when I think I'm better than you are. Pride is when I think I'm exempt from the rules. Everybody else has to drive a speed limit but me. Everybody else has got to do this but me. Everybody else, but me. And so we think we're exempt from all these rules. That's what Babylon thought. They thought they were exempt from the rules of fair warfare, exempt from the rules of treating prisoners of war, with some courtesy. They didn't do any of that. So, verse 3, I have commanded my sanctified ones. And the term sanctified means designated. And what he's talking about is the Medes and the Persians, who destroyed Babylon in 539 BC. So he says, I have commanded my designated ones. So who was in charge of stirring up the Medes and the Persians to march against Babylon? God did this, exactly. I have also called my mighty ones, the Medes and the Persians, for mine anger, or to execute my anger. See, God is angry, and he's going to use the Medes and the Persians to do something about his anger. All right? This is how God works. He uses people. All right? He uses human instrumentality to get things done, or nature itself to get things done in this world. Verse 4. All right, now can you see tens and tens of thousands of foot soldiers running down the hills, coming toward the city, headed to the gates? The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations, the Medes, the Persians, and the Armenians. Those were the nations that were the mixed group that was coming down militarily. Gathered together, the Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from afar. It is from the east, and so we've got some that came from the east country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. He had Babylon in crosshairs. Now, why did the Lord specifically despise Babylon? What did they do? Yeah, they had always been enemies of God's people. All right? Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. Now, this is a prophecy, by the way. Okay? Now, let me tell you how much of a prophecy it is. The Babylonian captivity is still 175 years away. Hadn't even happened yet. And the Lord's already saying, here's what I'm going to do because you're going to go in and capture my people. And it's 175 years away. So something's going on here that is divine. Okay? This is pretty amazing stuff. Verse 6. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. That means the day of Babylon's collapse. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, every man's heart shall melt. And we're talking about the citizens and the military of Babylon. They did not expect this at all. I mean, their wall, ladies and gentlemen, from everything that I have been able to determine, was 300 feet high. You realize that is a football field? How are you going to scale a 300-foot high sheer wall? This was incredible. No wonder they felt pretty safe by being behind something like that. And it was so broad you could. How many chariots was it? Like three or four chariots could ride abreast. So this thing was probably 30 to 40 feet wide and 300 feet tall. And they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them. That's an odd translation. It means the messengers who bear the news to the party, we're in trouble. Those are the guys that translated pangs and sorrows. So the guys that run into the palace hall that night that announce, we're being attacked right now. They shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. Talking about labor pains here. I've never experienced that, but I understand it's kind of nasty, kind of hard. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. And that's a little odd. But what it means is there was a sense of terror that was so shocking biologically to them that immediately their face would run red, flush. So there are going to be some physical changes in these people. Verse 9. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger. Now the word cruel, we're talking about unsparingly just. So this is going to be a terrible thing, but it's going to be just. See, God doesn't do things unjustly. Well, God had no right to go that far. Everything God does has a right to do, okay? And if we don't understand it, that's our fault. That's just simply our fault. So this guy's going to come cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners out of it, for the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. That's a little hard to translate. The word constellations there is the Hebrew word for fool. There are some historical records that attach this person to the constellation of Orion. I'm not telling you that's what this is. I'm just saying that I've read a lot of information that says that they looked at Orion as sort of a hero figure, and apparently that was going to lose its luster during this time of destruction. Now look at verse 11. I will punish the world for, you see the word there? Is it, it's not is it there, but is it italicized in your Bible? Okay, you know what an italicized word means, right? it was added by translators for clarity. All right? So that means that in the original autograph, it did not appear. So I will punish the world for evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. So why is God coming against Babylon? They were a haughty, I can do anything I want to do. I have enough power. I have enough authority. I can do anything I want to do. God hates that. He hates that in nations. He hates that in churches. He hates that in families. He hates that in us. Now, he's going to thin the population of Babylon down. All right? Now he's going to give us an illustration of just how rare a defender or a soldier, a living stand-up soldier, it's going to be kind of a rare thing. He says, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Defenders, military defenders, their foot soldiers are going to be rare as gold. They're going to be killed. And if you see one, it's like, oh wow, there's like a wedge of gold over there. There's just not going to be much left of this place, and there wasn't. Therefore, I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And it, that is Babylon, shall be as the chased roe. And chased roe means hunted gazelle. And as a sheep that no man taketh up. In other words, these people, they didn't raise all their meat. They did hunt, just like a lot of us in here. You don't buy all your groceries at the grocery store, do you? You hunt a lot of it, or some of it. You've got venison in your. That's what we're talking about here. And so Babylon is going to be like a buck on opening day in a public hunting area, with 25 tree stands. He's not going to stand a chance. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee everyone to his own land. In other words, Babylon had more than just Babylonian people in it. All right, they had captured people from all of these surrounding nations, and these people were like, "Whoa, I'm not part of this. I'm out of here." They're going to try to get away. No one is going to escape this carnage. Nobody is. Verse number 15 says, everyone that is found shall be thrust through. And everyone that is joined, and that means caught, everybody that's caught unto them, which means hiding in a house. So if you're caught hiding in a house, you're going to get killed. So these Medes and the Persians went door to door to door, kicking open the bedroom doors, kicking over the closet doors, the bathroom doors, and if anybody was hiding in that house, they were killed immediately. Their children. I want somebody to turn to Psalm 139 and read verses 8 and 9. Psalm 139, 8 and 9. And when you get it, just raise your hand. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. Who's got 137, 8 and 9? John? I've got one. What's 137, 8 and 9? Yeah, read that.
O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewards thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that takes and dashes thy little ones against the stone.
All right. Folks, there are some things that I can't explain to you about the behavior of God. Would you do this, by the way? Just on your own, would you take kids and bash their heads out against a stone wall? God commanded this. I don't understand that. I don't have to. All I know is God does not do wrong. We have no clue how God hates sin. because of the destruction that it brings to people's lives. And so everybody in this city, everybody, was going to be killed one way or another. Verse 17, behold, I will stir up the Medes. Now these Medes were the descendants of Jephthah. They're not Arabs. These, ladies and gentlemen, were Iranians. Okay? So I will stir up the Iranians. They're easily stirred even today, by the way. Against them which shall not regard silver. Hey, man, I'll give you $100. You let my family live. They don't. They had their pride issue as well. And their pride issue was, we are good at being bad. And the baddest thing we can do is kill you. And we're going to kill you. You keep your money. We're going to get your money anyway, you know. And so, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. You're not going to be able to bribe them to let your family live. Their bows also shall dash their young men to pieces. The young men to pieces. They were famous archers. These guys were world famous for their ability to handle a bow. And they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eye shall not spare children. Well, this is tough for me. It really is. And apparently it didn't matter how old kids were. These kids were slaughtered. Now, this is what Babylon did to other cultures, by the way. And I've told you before, God doesn't punish you for your sin. He punishes you with your sin. So the thing that you plant is the thing that you will harvest. This is what they have planted. And it has been inevitable that this is the stuff that's going to be harvested in their culture and in their city, and it was. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there. Now, when the Arabians wouldn't live in a place, that was bad news. And the reason they wouldn't live in a place is because they had a fear of ghosts. And there was one particular ghost that they were horrified of that lived, they thought, in the area where the city of Babylon was. I'll give you one guess as to who it was. Nimrod. They were horrified of the spirit or the ghost of Nimrod. They wouldn't go near this place, all right? Neither shall the shepherds. Yes, yes. Neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. So they wouldn't, nobody. Did you know that we didn't know where this city was up until, the mid-1800s? We didn't even know where it was located. We think. And you know what's there today? Nothing. That's exactly right. Absolutely nothing.
That's where the hanging garden was.
Yep. I mean, this place was gigantic. And the Lord said, it's just, you won't even be able to find it. And that's exactly what happened. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures or howling creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And a satyr is I really don't know how to explain this. It's a half goat, half man. There ain't no such thing, if I can put it that way. But just to give you an idea of the demonic attraction of this place, okay? And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses. And so these houses that were kicked in and people were murdered and slaughtered, nobody's ever going to live there again. The Arabians are not going to live there because they're scared to death of ghosts, and they wouldn't have anything to do with it. And so you've got snakes and lizards and coyotes and all this kind of stuff, and dragons, which is reptiles, in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Wow. That's pretty grisly, pretty gruesome. And by the way, this happened. It happened exactly like this. All right, now, chapter 14. The Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. This is now the Babylonian release. All right, they've been held captive for 70 years, and so this is not necessarily in chronological order. So if you're looking for it to be A, B, C, D, E, it's going to be like A, L, P, Q, R. It's kind of a mixed up thing, at least from our point of view. He will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Now here's what he's talking about. Babylon captured Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar sent troops down there on 3 separate occasions, and finally he got tired of messing with the Jews and destroyed everything. But in the first vacuuming of people out of the city of Jerusalem, Daniel was one of those with his 3 buddies. They were there for 70 years. When they went back home, when Cyrus gave the decree for them to go back home, they had so impacted many, many, many Babylonians. Guess what many Babylonians did? Man, can I go with you? And they did. So a lot of Babylonians moved back down to Jerusalem because of, some of they learned their lesson. This was the thing that broke idolatry in Israel, and it did. Now, with very few exceptions of a few outbreaks, Israel collectively never got into idolatry again. This broke it off in them this 70 years, as it should. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. Well, how about that? Guess who was the boss in Babylon? Now guess who the boss is back down in Jerusalem. And so the tide has turned, but they agreed to do it. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say. Now, we're going to get into what's called a taunt song. And a taunt song is like when FSU plays Florida and one of them wins the game. And the student body on the winning side taunts, right? Have you ever seen an FSU fan? And I've seen this for many years, by the way, when at the end of the game, the FSU fans are doing this, or if Florida wins, the Florida fan, and what are they doing? They're taunting them. They're making fun of them. Exactly right, on both sides of the field. And you see that in sports all the time. And so what we're about to read now it's a taunt. And here's the taunt. How hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff or the stick. The thing that you were beating us with, God broke that stick. And the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. Nobody's going to stop the persecutors being persecuted now. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller, so this is a southern translation here. Ain't no fellers come down here, no. We're talking about lumberjacks here, all right? Now, again, this is a literal thing here, because when Babylon would capture a place, one of the things that they would do, they would clear-cut forest, because wood was very expensive, first of all, and they would use this lumber to build their homes and their buildings in this captured land. Well, now, even the trees are like, oh my goodness, I'm glad that guy's out of here. And now the taunt begins in verse number 9. And here is, let me give you the substance of it, and then we'll read it. Hell kind of stands up, and forms a welcoming committee for the king of Babylon. All right? So, verse number 9, hell from beneath is moved. And the word moved means thrown into agitation. It's kind of like, whoa, did y'all hear? Man, did y'all, oh, Babylon, oh, my word. And everybody's all stirred up. For thee to meet thee at thy, welcome to hell, man. We're glad you're here. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. So what does that tell you about the occupancy of hell? This is the grave, by the way. What does it tell you? Kings and princes and important people, doesn't matter who you are. You know, if you're wrong with God and you die wrong with God, you will stay wrong with God forever. That's a terrible thing, but that's what we're looking at here. Verse number 10, and they, the kings that have already died, they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Making fun of him. And the word weak there means feeble or powerless. Oh, hey, big boy, you with the big muscles. Well, you're just like us now. We thought we had it all together, and now look at you. Welcome to the club. Art thou become like unto us? And the answer is, yeah. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy viols, your orchestras that played hail to the chief when you walked in the room, and everybody just thought you were all that. Now, it's interesting. Listen, look at verse 11. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Now, let me extract that a little bit. This is the same worm that they got dye from to dye their fancy carpets and blankets and clothes. So, the worms used to cover them with their fancy clothes dyed from the worms. Now the worms are going to cover them again. But it's the worms this time. It's not the fancy dye. And so the carpet underneath them is worms. And the clothes that they wear, they're covered now because they're dead. Verse number 12. Now this has been, I think, mistranslated a bunch. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? Now, traditionally, this is translated, he's just shifted from Babylon to Satan, and he has not. Okay? The word Lucifer here is it's the Hebrew word for day star. Lucifer is not in the Hebrew translation here. And this refers to the Babylonian king. And he thought he was the dawn of civilization, the day star. Everything, when he got up, sun rose. When he went to bed, sun set. I mean, he just thought that was who he was. And how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Now, question, can this be extracted to be applied to Satan at a future time? Absolutely. But now, primarily, this is talking about the king of Babylon, all right? Now, verse number 13. This is what the king of Babylon thought. Thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. North, for some reason, was always where false religions and pagan cultures believed their gods lived. If there were mountains in the area, they always lived in the mountains of the north. Never east or west or south. Always. So this guy's going for the corner office in the top of the building. All right. Now, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, which is singular, by the way. I will be like the Most High. All right. Now, what's he talking about? I'm going to exalt myself above the cloud. That's the Shekinah. This guy's not going to just be God. He's going to be better than God. All right? This guy had this idea he was better than God. Now, does Satan also share that mentality? Yes. But the primary application is not to Satan. it is to the king of Babylon. This is how arrogant this man was. I think he deserved everything he got with this collapse of this whole thing. All right, verse 15. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, or the grave, to the sides of the pit. Not the sides of the north, the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee. You ever squinted your eyes at somebody? It's kind of like, really? So he's not going to be in hell or in the grave what he was in Babylon. People aren't going to look at him like that. And consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth? What? This is the guy? You ever heard somebody on the radio, for instance, and they got this great, big, deep, booming voice, and then you meet them in person, and they're like, what? Little bitty thing, yeah. I had a lady one time, I was downtown somewhere, and she was with part of her family. Anyway, we were introduced, and she said, are you the guy on the radio? It was back when we had a radio program years ago. And I said, yes, ma'am. She says, oh, you're nothing like I thought you were. I don't know what she meant by that, but I got her point. I said, well, I'm so sorry that I disappointed you. So anyway, you're the guy that everybody's been scared to death of? You're the one, you made the earth to tremble and you shook the nations? You that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners? You took them prisoner. You never let them go home. You're the guy that did that. All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house or his grave. So most of these kings had this ornate burial. The pharaohs of Egypt built these magnificent pyramids. I mean, they buried themselves in these just museums. Well, look what happened to the king of Babylon. But thou art cast out of thy grave, which means he did not get this royal burial. We're not sure what happened. He might have just been thrown in the pile of corpses in the middle of town, which is probably what happened. Like an abominable branch. As the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. So he got stepped on just like everybody else. He didn't have this great big fancy royal mausoleum to be buried in. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. In other words, the line would end with Belshazzar. His family line was over. The lineage of Babylonian kings was over. It was done. This is the guy that just drove a stake in the heart of his own people. Stupid rulers ruin their people. They ruin their country. They ruin their culture. And prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the face of the world with cities. His family they never went anywhere else to become kings and rule. They didn't do that. His family was cut off here in Babylon. Verse 22. For I will rise up against them, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant and son and nephew. There won't be one male member of your family left, period. Now, what does a man want? What is one of the things that a man wants in life? He wants his name, his seed to continue. That's a big deal in every culture. But this guy is not going to have that. I will also make it a possession for the bittern. Now, what do y'all think a bittern is? Isn't that some kind of a bird, a bittern? But it's hedgehog. It's a Hebrew word for hedgehog. And apparently, this part of the world where Babylon used to be had huge hedgehogs for some reason. And pools of water, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, saith the Lord of hosts. This is a reference to this was a genius what they did to reroute this river. They cut it off, built a dam, cut the water off, dried up the riverbed. They marched right underneath the palace, and boom, popped up, killed everybody. Yes, sir.
But they didn't do that in one day, so
No.
they had the pomp and the confidence that nobody could come in.
Nobody.
How long did it take them to do that?
Yep.
And nobody noticed, nobody's on the wall looking. So,
Yep.
oh, you know, we're in trouble.
And it happened at night. The final collapse happened at night, which is the worst. That's the worst time for anything to happen, you know. If you're sick, when do you feel worse? At night. If you hear a noise in the daytime, but you hear it at night, you know, there's just something about night that magnifies horror.
You mentioned earlier tens of thousands of ground troops that they had that were coming. All everybody had to have is a rock about that big, one rock per person, and that would have been enough to dam the river.
But they didn't. Anyway, a besom in verse number 23 is a sweep net. And so it's like throwing a big net over the whole city, just drags everything off. 24. Now, we switch countries. We're going to Assyria. And same situation. We've got a country that abused Judah. And I'm just telling you, you don't do that. Even in the smallest way, you don't do the Jews wrong. You just don't do that. And that's one reason I am so thankful that the United States historically has been a friend of Israel. And we'd better pray that we always are a friend to these people. Because I'm telling you, if a socialist gets elected president of the United States, that's going to change the character of our relationship to the Jews. And when that happens, folks, we're in some serious trouble. And so this is not just a thing that's going to affect us, you know, nationally and, you know, our economy and job situation and all of that. And those are important issues. But this one particular country is the country that God said, this is the barometer of how I treat every other nation. You touch them, I'll kill you. I'll destroy you. I will send this nation against this nation. And so this is people. I get tickled. People say, "Well, you know, back in the Bible days, we are in Bible days. See, we are living in Bible days right now. Always have been, always will be." All right, verse 25. Well, 20. I didn't read 24. The Lord of hosts hath sworn, saying, "Surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass, and as I have purposed, so shall it stand." Now, this is God speaking. This is what I purpose to do, and guess what? That's what's going to happen. That I will break the Assyrian, this is Sennacherib, who was the king of Assyria. I will break the Assyrian in my land and upon my mountains, tread him underfoot. Then shall his yoke depart from off them and his burden depart from off their shoulders. Sennacherib was defeated on the mountains right close to Jerusalem. It was literally in his land, talking about God's land, that this man was killed and his armies were defeated. Verse 26. This is the purpose that is purposed upon the whole earth. You hear what he just said? I want the whole world to understand. You touch Israel, I'll kill you. This is what I do. And so he's just giving everybody a warning. I don't think Syria heard this. I don't think Russia's read this. I don't think Turkey and Iran, and I don't think these people have read this. If they have, they haven't taken it seriously. You don't mess with these people. All right, verse number 27. For the Lord of hosts hath purposed, and who shall disannul it? And his hand is stretched out, and who shall turn it back? Nobody. Now let's jump to one more country, and we'll be done for the night. Y'all have been good, by the way. Are you okay? Every night in school we have to take a break. Anybody need a break? Y'all run and get a Dr. Pepper or something? All right, let's wrap this up and I'll let you go. All right, now we're going to talk about Philistia. In the year that King Ahaz died was this burden. Rejoice not, thou, whole Palestina, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, or snake, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. All right? These are the sons of kings. All right? One king dies. Well, don't rejoice. It ain't over yet, because he's going to have kids, and so we've got this lineage going on. And the firstborn of the poor shall feed, and the needy shall lie down in safety. And I will kill thy root with famine, and he shall slay thy remnant. Howl, O gate. Cry, O city. Thou, whole Palestina, art dissolved. This is, or Philistia. For there shall come from the north a smoke, and none shall be alone in his appointed times. What shall one then answer the messengers of the nation? That the Lord hath founded Zion, and the poor of his people shall trust in it. Ahaz died, which is in verse number 28. He died in 715 BC. And he was pro-Assyrian. We talked about that last week. Wanted to make a pact with them for defensive purposes, but what he didn't know is Assyria was in some trouble. And she eventually turned like a dog on Judah. Every nation that has ever taken up arms against Israel, either they're extinct tonight or they're going to be. And honestly, if y'all can help me with this, help me. I don't understand why we can't learn from the lessons of history. I don't understand that. Yeah. Right. Always will be. Right. Right.
They don't understand that we are those people that God's talking about in the Bible.
Right. Well, there are a lot of folks, I think, that believe that the Bible times ended in 100 AD when Revelation was finished. The last book of the Bible is written, and so now we're in clear sailing. No, we ain't either. We're not either. Yes, sir.
I read a phrase in one of the Hillsdale College about history and learning from history, and the phrase I think that coined what you're saying is idiotic delusion of the exceptional now.
Yeah. Pretty good way to put it. Pretty good way to put it. But, yes, sir. Different results, yeah. But let me encourage you in something. If you buy a fixer-upper, okay, and when you first walk in it, you're like, oh, my word. Ceiling tiles are falling down. Floors curling up. Man, we're going to have to replace the doors and da-da-da. And, you just think this is the way it's always going to be. No, it's not. No, the renovator is coming. Okay, and I realize that our doors are falling off internationally, and I realize that the ceiling is leaking, and I understand that the house of human history is falling apart. But the renovator, the one who bought it, all right, he bought it, he paid for it. This is my Father's world, and he's going to come, and he's going to renovate everything one day. And so let's not get discouraged and overwhelmed with, oh, my goodness, this is terrible and awful. In a way it is, but in a way, this is exactly what's got to happen, before the Lord is going to come and sweep out the trash, kind of put it that way. And he's going to renovate everything. Yes, sir.
I'm challenged understanding Satan. We talked about him here in these verses, but he is the one that's behind, the motivator behind this. And you heard me say he's not omnipresent, so I don't think he's ever
Yes, sir.
Pray for Vladimir Putin. We need to pray for these nation leaders because he does visit them.
He does. Yes, he does. And he turns their heart like rivers of water. These irrigation canals that you can just kick the end of it in and, redirect it the other way. God is that powerful to change the hearts of people. But, yeah, you're exactly right. Thank y'all. It's 8 o'clock. It's time to go to the house. Y'all got a big week ahead of you? Pray for John. He's got some surgery coming up on Friday. And so pray that goes well and they get all that squared away. Yes, sir.
I'm taking my mama to her 70th year drill team reunion. She was on the first drill team at Manatee High in 1947.
Oh, my goodness.
She graduated in 1948. So they're having a banquet, and Anna gets to take her to the football game Saturday night. She's going to have a chair. She's going to sit out on the field at halftime.
Oh, my goodness. 1947. Wow.
So just pray for us traveling back and forth, no trip and fall injury on the field.
Yeah, okay. Scotty's like, there was a 1947? Yeah. You're graduating from high school, bud? Man, that was a good picture of you that your mom posted. I can't